Hello and welcome to Iridium Rock and Metal Reviews. And today we're going to do episode 1 of discussing the classics. So the first album we're going to discuss is High and Dry by Def Leppard. So I've got with me today Darren. How you doing, Darren, from Sleeve Saturday?
Hi, Lee. Evening. How are you, mate? I've got a beer. I've got my beer in hand, and I'm looking forward to talking about the album.
Excellent. And we've also got Rex from Stryper Drive. How you doing, Rex?
Hey, Lee. I'm doing great, my friend.
Cool. And I've got Vamp the Cat. There you go. There he is, but he's going, hopefully. All right. Okay, so the first episode we're going to do discussing the classics. So obviously, High and Dry, definitely a classic, Def Leppard. The second album from the band. What we're going to do, we're going to discuss the actual album cover first, because that was a big thing. I don't know if you agree, guys, back in the 80s especially, 70s, 80s, 90s probably, an album, well, not 90s so much because CDs were around, but when you actually bought an LP, I know they're about now, that was one of the big things, wasn't it? Getting your LP home, lyrics, a nice album cover. What do you guys think of this High and Dry album cover then?
Yeah, you know, I like it. On one of my reviews for Foreigner 4, I called out how shit that album cover was. I didn't like it. But with this album, Leppard never put their faces on an album anyway. So with this particular one, I don't know. It's basic. You could look at it and say it's basic, but High and Dry, it's a guy diving into a pool, kind of does what it says in the tin. They could have done better, but I don't hate it.
I mean, yeah, the swimming pool thing, Darren, is cool, but what about all those guys looking up like it? That's the part of the cover I don't get. It's like too much contrast there, and the swimming pool guys in color, and then they're in black and white. It's like, what?
Yeah, I don't like the cover, especially after, I mean, for a debut album, On Through the Night, that was pretty cool, wasn't it? That was a pretty cool cover, that. But I don't know. I know an album cover ain't everything, but it sort of was back then. It was sort of a lot to do with it. I mean, I bought albums based on an album cover back in the 80s. But
yeah, agreed. It does have a lot. It does have a lot to do with it in terms of what as you said, you'd go into a record store and you'd actually buy the album based on how it looks, like a book. Sometimes you can buy a book just based on its cover. So it's got to sell the record. I get what you're saying, Rex. The border is almost like, with people looking up, it's almost like a frame around it. I'm not saying that I'm overly pushed on it, but I don't think I dislike it as much as you two guys.
Okay.
Right, let's just before we get on the track by track, because we're going to take turns in talking about the tracks, let's talk about the production. Mutt Lange, or Mutt Lang, I'm not really sure. I think it's Mutt Lang.
Robert John Mutt Lang, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the production is really good. I was listening to the album today. It's sort of obviously a lot more basic than what he did later on with Def Leppard. But, I mean, I think it just done what it should have done at the time. 1981, really good production, I think. What do you guys think? What about you, Darren?
Totally with you on that. I think, did he do Back in Black as well in 81? I think he'd either just done Back in Black, or he was, or which came out first? I don't know which album came out first.
Back in Black
1980.
came out 1980. Yeah.
1980. Yeah. So he was coming off. He done Back in Black, didn't he? So he was kind of coming off the back of that as well. He's an unbelievable. Now, in later years, obviously he's gone down more of a pop route, but in the 80s, you're absolutely right, Lee. This guy was smashing it with albums, with Leppard, with AC/DC, done Loverboy stuff, Huey Lewis and the News. He was smashing it.
Yeah, I love the production. I think it was great. And it's sort of, they were definitely a step. I mean, a lot of people like the On Through the Night album. But I think this was a big step up. And I think it really showed how good they were. I think the production really helped that as well. I mean, the guitar work on it, we're going to get on track by track. But I think it really, like, every instrument was just shining, a great production.
And I think, as the albums progressed with him, they even got better with Mutt Lang producing. I mean, you look at High and Dry compared to Pyromania, Pyromania I feel is even better. And then you go to Hysteria. I mean, it just keeps going up in the incredible production of those albums and pushing those guys.
Well, we will probably, as classic albums, we'll probably get onto both of those albums in the future. But I've got a bit of a different opinion about the production. I suppose we shouldn't really talk about it now because we're talking about High and Dry. But as far as production is concerned, and I know it was a huge thing for Def Leppard, especially on Hysteria, there was a lot of money put into it. But I look back on it now, let's just say that. I'm
interested to see when we get to
I can't wait for that one, Lee. Yeah, that'll be cool.
So, right, High and Dry. So there's no point in really talking about, how it sounds until we talk about it track by track. So, I think we should do it like that. So we've got the start off track. Darren's going to run us through that. Let It Go.
Yeah, Let It Go, track 1. So this song obviously is the first song on the album, but it's also the first. They only released 2 singles from this LP, and this was the first one of the 2. And like a lot of the tracks on this LP, as we go through it, I'm sure you guys are going to say as well. You've got Steve Clark, Pete Willis, and Joe Elliott writing this particular one. They seem to, as a trio, write a lot of songs on this album. This first one is that. I mean, look, Steve Clark, the opening guitar on this. This is you press play on this back in the day, or you put the needle on it, or you hit play on your CD, whatever, tape, whatever it might be. But the opening guitar from Steve Clark on this is bang. Well, welcome to High and Dry. You're in. There's no messing about with it. What a musician, that guy was. What I love about this song as well is that, from the opening verse, they're not like, they're about as subtle as a sledgehammer about what the song is actually about. It's effectively about a blowjob. It's which is what it is. This whole song is about that. I was looking up the lyrics and stuff, and what I took down was, so make your move, make me, and get ready for the right. I'm looking like, don't play this song in the car with your granny. It's subject matter like that, but like its subject matter is filthy. But it's sonics. I mean, what a way to open the album and really set the tone for what you're going to get over the next 9 tracks after this one. Great way to set the tone for the album, open up sonically and lyrically. This is hard rock.
Yeah, I mean, Rex, what you got to say about Let It Go, mate?
I think, I agree with Darren. You're starting to hear like what I would call the true classic Def Leppard sound already from the first track. And I'll talk a little bit about that in the second track. But, and like you said, Darren, Steve's guitar playing in the beginning. I mean, it just starts out and you're just like, boom, okay, we're on a ride. Let's go. It's just awesome.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, when singles back in the 80s, I think especially British bands, they were expected to bring out, as singles, expected to bring out quite heavy songs. The fans would expect them to bring out something a bit heavy. And that's definitely, Let It Go was definitely, it's one of the heaviest tracks on the album. They could have easily brought out something different off this album, but they went for heaviness is what fans expected back then, really. You got, I suppose, in England, we would, and Ireland, I suppose, but maybe not, Rex might not get this, but English fans with heavy bands, expectations were the heavy side. We even have bands come over from America, and they would play their heavier songs rather than back then. They'd play the heavier songs because that's what the crowd expected. I don't know. It was just one of those things, I suppose, but not so much now. But it was really like that. The heavier songs were played in England. That's how we wanted it. Yeah. But not me. I like well, we get onto the sort of tracks I like better anyway. But but I mean that's just one of those things. So excellent opening track. Brilliant. What a start, like you said. Next one, Rex is going to talk us through Another Hit and Run.
Yeah, this song has like a super long intro before there's any vocals or whatever. So that's, a little bit different. It's just another good rocking song. It has, again, that Def Leppard sound that we're kind of come to know now on it. The guitars are very catchy. There's just a lot going on in that song with Joe with Steve and Pete playing guitar. It's one of my favorite tracks off the album, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed when I was listening to it today, you said that there was after about a minute of really good guitar work, the song really explodes, really. An absolutely brilliant song. It's one of my favourites as well. How about you, Darren?
Yeah, agreed. I think, as I said, from opening up with the first song, it sets the tone for what the first song sets the tone for what you're getting in this album, and I think that just that smoothly transitions to track 2 effectively.
Yeah, it's a great song. So next up, I'm taking the title track, High and Dry, in brackets actually, Saturday Night. So the AC/DC really comes out in this. I mean, I think obviously we got the Mutt Lang producing the album, AC/DC Connections. I believe that the management as well, what I remember reading back then was the AC/DC management as well. I'm not sure, managed both bands. But, the riffing in that, you could just take it straight, the solo as well, straight out of the Angus Handbook, isn't it? I mean, unbelievable. That I love the song. It's got some real energy in the song. Joe Elliott, I mean, he definitely... he changed his vocals, didn't he, as the albums went on. I mean, he really sort of screamed a lot of the time on this album. I love that part of Joe Elliott's voice. He's sort of got like a talking. Sometimes he sort of talks near enough, but when he belts it out, which he's done less and less over the years, I've noticed. I don't think that he's probably made a good choice there, because I think if he carried on singing like he did on this album all the way through his career, he probably wouldn't have kept his voice. He made a.
I have a similar. I've got a similar opinion on. I'll get onto exactly what you're making about how Joe's voice has changed over the years. But I'll get onto that when I have a note on that on one of the tracks. So you're absolutely right, though.
Yeah, I mean, I caught him live.
There's a lot of almost.
Go on, sorry, mate. Go on.
Yep.
Go on.
Oh no, like you said, especially in the chorus, he's like almost literally screaming. High and dry. I mean, he couldn't do that for years and years. There's no way.
Nah, I mean, I caught them live at Download last year. I think it was last year or the year before, and they played Hysteria and a few other. They played Hysteria in total, the whole album, and they did some other tracks as well. And he near enough. He's really clever, because what he does now, he sang everything. He sang every note, but he sort of talked it. It was because he wouldn't be able to sing like he did back then, and not a lot of singers at his age can. I think it's really clever how he changed his voice over the period of Def Leppard. But I do love his voice on this. I love the roughness of it. I think it was great. So obviously he's a lot younger then, So, but a great track, a brilliant track. Yeah. Right. The next track, I've sorted this out on purpose because I know Darren likes this one. I've heard him talk about this one before. So, Darren, bring in On the Heartbreak.
Bringing on the heartbreak, indeed. So as we said earlier, I got both singles from this album. This was the second one, and it's almost kind of as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking this is a hard rock kind of album, but this almost is bordering on ballad. It's not ballad, but it's certainly softer than some of the rest of them. I'm just, as I was kind of listening to it, I wouldn't say Pete Willis has been erased from the Def Leppard narrative. I wouldn't say that necessarily. But you do have to remember how good this guy was in the early formation of this band, in their first 3 albums, let's say. I know he had this was kind of his last full album. But Pete Willis, I mean, like from the writing of songs on this album to his partnership with Steve Clark, it's absolutely brilliant. And it's kind of, I do like Clark with Phil Collin later on, but I think Clark with Pete, it's just very raw in these early albums. I really love that. Yeah. I had a note here as well around the I know we were talking about Mutt a little bit earlier on, but at the start of this song, they leave in a little bit of a studio chatter on it, and they're talking about Pete detuning his guitar. So as the song starts, right after the first solo at the beginning, there's a little lull, and you can hear the studio chatter. Now, this isn't really what you would associate with Mutt Lang, because later on he gets really slick and he would never allow this kind of stuff to stay in. But I'm glad he kept that in, because it's kind of a cool. I love little quirks like that when you can hear a little bit of studio chatter on the song. I'm quite passionate about this song, and it irks me that it didn't do better. This should have been a smash hit for Def Leppard when it was released. I think Joe has said the same thing. They thought this was going to be a hit for them, and it wasn't. And it's a bit of a weird one, because it did get a lot of play on MTV. which was relatively new at the time, but it's getting a lot of play on MTV, but still isn't a hit. That is a travesty. This should have been a big hit for Def Leppard at this point in their career. Second album in.
Yeah, I love the song, man. It was one of my favourites when I was younger, without a doubt. It really did resonate with me. Cool song, and it Rex. This Bringing on the Heartbreak, brilliant, mate.
The beginning always, it just sounds so sad. I don't know how to explain it. You know, that whole guitar thing. It just you know, you can just immediately feel that sadness or whatever. And until the chorus, you know, starts, you know, then it starts really getting up in the tempo. It's kind of okay for me, I guess. I don't know if it's my American whatever, but you know, you guys seem to really like it maybe a little bit more than I do. I'm not saying that it's a bad or terrible song, but it wouldn't be personally one of my favorites from the album.
Yeah.
Which is funny, Rex, because the fact that it wasn't big in America, you know, and as you said, you're American, you're not digging it. Something must have been about it because it didn't chart. So, who knows?
Yeah, it's strange. It does sound like a hit to me, especially back in the 80s, but you know, it just wasn't to be. But obviously, they done something right in the end, didn't they? I mean,
they got there in the end, but this should have been a big hit for them, but it wasn't. But you know, I'm not gonna cry a river for Def Leppard, for Millionaires Def Leppard.
Oh no. Well, that leads straight into.
Right.
Really does lead into actually the next track, which Rex is going to talk about, Switch 625.
And I have always loved this instrumental. I wish they would do something like this on every album. I know they had one, you know, on the first album, but this thing, I think one of the reasons why I really like it, the drums are, I feel they have them a little bit higher in the mix. I don't know if they did that on purpose, and it's just a really driving song. You know, it's only like a little over 3 minutes long, but I love everything about it. You know, every time I played, I played it several times again today, like getting ready for this, and I'm like, man, that is so cool. And you know, it was just good to leave that as instrumental, I think. I mean, it's just, you know, you got the drums and the bass there really going, and I don't know how I could just keep on talking about the song. I've always loved that song. I always loved that instrumental.
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, I'm not a big instrumental fan. There's a few that I think are great. This is one of them. I love Mr. Scary Dokken, you know, and I love Metallica's Orion as well. So when it comes to instrumentals, usually I'm a skip. I press the skip buttons, to tell you the truth. I'm not really into them, but I think it's a great track, a really great track. Darren?
Absolutely. I'm a little bit different. I'm kind of with Rex on this. I do like an instrumental. I'm gonna mention it on my next track on Lady Strange, but I actually do like an instrumental. So I'm kind of with Rex on this track.
Yeah. Oh, cool. So the next track's mine. You got me running. So another AC/DC type riff at the beginning. I mean, definitely taking some influence there. And I was talking about Joe Elliott earlier on as well. I think when he does that screaming type thing, we sort of not entirely, but taking a bit out of Bon Scott's, you know, little bits of Bon Scott there. I think, you know, when he definite some, you know, little bits there. I was listening today thinking, all over the album, AC/DC, I'm thinking, but a commercial AC/DC, if you like. I'll tell you what I love about this song, and I think it's easily the best thing about this actual song is that there's a pre-chorus, and they don't actually sing the chorus till they do verse, pre-chorus, verse, pre-chorus, then the chorus actually comes in. But that pre-chorus is one of the catchiest things I've ever heard of. The bit that goes just to, I'm not a very good singer, but you know, the bit that goes, oh no, no, ever thought I feel so low. Oh, just so catchy, that bit. I don't know what it is about this song, but that's my favorite bit of the song. The chorus, you know, I can sort of, it's okay, but that pre-chorus is the best thing about it. And very Angus Young again on the solo, very much AC/DC sort of sounding. but there's nothing wrong with that. AC/DC are a cool band, especially back then, you know. So it's the best.
Do you think they were? Do you think Lee might have been taking a little bit of? Do you think this was taking a bit of inspiration literally from AC/DC, or is this something to do with Mutt Lange in the boot?
No, I think
what's going on here.
I think there was definitely some AC/DC influence. They're still doing their own thing, obviously, but the riffing, especially on some of these, and the solos. I mean, High and Dry is, you know, straight out of the AC/DC book, but all through the album, you can hear little bits of guitar work, you know, just straight away reminded me of, you're talking Highway to Hell sort of solos coming out, you know, that sort of period, which was only, 2 years before?
Yeah.
79, I think, Highway to Hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they were a massive band, AC/DC, when they were probably the biggest band around about that time, late 70s. You know, they were in England, probably. Biggest heavy rock band, if you like. But no, I love it. But they do it in a way where it's really commercial as well, because, you know, AC/DC probably not the most commercial band. They're like a rock and roll band, but Def Leppard on this album were mixing out with melodic stuff plus them sort of AC/DC. Really clever. And no wonder that, you know, they made it, because they appealed to a lot of people. But love Absolutely. You got me running. Love it.
I don't think I can add anything to that, Lee. I think you've kind of summed it up.
The only thing that I can add, Lee, is when I was listening to that song today, the background vocals, just as you were alluding to too, I really think it was a hint of what was to come with all the vocals and how Mutt would produce them on future albums, and that really popped into my head. I'm like, oh yeah, that reminds me of the Def Leppard that we all remember, those background vocals on that song.
Oh yeah, you're totally right there, mate. I mean, they like you said, later on them albums, their backing vocals were amazing, weren't they? Even when I saw them live, they were still amazing, you know. So, you're definitely right there, mate. Okay, Darren, next track, Lady Strange, mate.
Track 7, Lady Strange. Okay, so Steve Clark again, right? It opens up with Steve, and I listened to this like you, Rex. You know, going back over the album today, I played the first 40 seconds of this song twice before I even listened to Joe. I just rewound it, just back and went, start again, because the first open 40 seconds on this with Steve Clark's instrument, I just love a good guitar sound, and Steve was top of class, like, with this kind of stuff. Joe, we were talking about Joe, so we were talking about Joe's voice changing. Think about Joe. Like, Joe always seemed old to me. I was born the year this album came out, but Joe was only 21 here. And like, the youth in his voice, you know, it's just kind of he's no fear at all. He just goes for it. You're right, Rex. You mentioned that once it gets onto hysteria and stuff, or as we went into the 90s and Love and Hate Collide and all that kind of stuff, he tamed it down. But here he's 21 and he has no fear. He's just going for it with his vocals on this. It's absolutely unbelievable. I won't get too bogged down in it, but as you guys know, I love the meanings within a song. I really love getting deep down and kind of having, pulling the lyrics apart, pulling the song meanings apart. And this one is kind of written from a young man's perspective. It's kind of about a woman coming into his life like a force of nature, and it's kind of he knows that she's the wrong woman for him, and he's toast. There's no getting away from this, but she's gonna break his heart. We've all been there. We've all had that girl when we were younger who we know is gonna break our heart, and you're toast, but you still go for it anyway because you can't help yourself. And that's what this song is about. And if track 1, when I was talking about it, was effectively about lust, it was about, as we said, it was about oral sex. This one flips the script, and he actually sings the lyric, but this time, you've got me on my knees. Joe sings that lyric, and I'm kind of thinking, yeah, it's metaphorical. It's not literally, this one's not literally about oral sex, but it's kind of it's her being the dominant one, and he's the one in trouble. He's the one emotionally in trouble in this. And it's just about falling for the wrong woman. And when it combines it with like the guitars and then the subject matter and Joe's vocal with no fear, stunning track. I love it. It's probably my favorite on the album. Well, after Heartbreak, it's probably my favorite on the album.
Yeah, it just has never done anything for me. I just feel that as a whole, it's probably one of the weaker songs on the album. No offense, Darren. For me personally, it just, I don't know, it doesn't do much at all for me. I tried to listen to it again today, hoping that maybe I would catch something, and it doesn't, just for me, it just doesn't do too much.
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, I agree with Darren on this. I like it. I think it's weird. It's weird. I think it's that melodic side of me. I mean, I'm more in general. I like that sort of melodic music, and it's sort of like not a slow song, but it's sort of quite close to a slow song, if you know what I mean. It's not a ballad, but I love there's a lovely twin lead bit at the beginning as well. But the thing is, it's really cool on this album. They really mixed up, didn't they? I mean, look, they got an instrumental, they got a slow song, they've got some real rockers. You know what I mean? I sort of miss that now, where bands give you that from all sides. You know, I mean, there are a few of them. There's a few bands that still do that, but some of the melodic stuff these days that's meant to be in this sort of category, newer bands that I listen to, it could be the whole 12, 13 tracks. You know, it's the same sort of thing. You know, I do miss mixing it up. Our bands used to, but you know, it's just the way it is, isn't it?
Can I ask you a question? Do you guys pull back from song meanings when it comes to hard rock like this, or do you kind of or am I just mental? Am I the one that's just getting like pulling the lyrics apart, or do you guys have a look at that and kind of have a look at what the lyrics actually mean and put it back to like earlier songs in the album, or am I on my own on that?
No, I look at the lyrics, Darren. I want to see what they're talking about and what a song's about. It's just not about the music. So yeah, I try to check those out also.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm as in depth as you, Darren. I think for me, the music sort of grabs me first. I think the thing is, I think bands back then, they were sort of more simple with lyrics. I think they were less abstract as bands are now. You know, with bands now, some bands, you don't even know what they're going on about. And they say they leave it up to the listener, what it's about.
Yeah.
But I think half the time they don't even know what they're talking about. I think they just go so abstract. It could be about anything, you know. But back then, life seemed to be a lot simpler in lyrics, don't you think? I mean, do you know what I mean? It used to be near enough you would be able to tell what they were singing about. I mean, some bands now, I don't know what they're going on about, some of them.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's not as abstract, but at the same time, you've got three guys sitting down in a room, in my view, and I like to kind of think, you know, these guys are like, they're boozing, there's probably a bit of drugs going on, who knows what's going on, the rock star lifestyle. But at the same time, they sit down and they write this song, like Lady Strange, about, you know, what it really is to like fall in love with the wrong woman. So it's not complicated, but at the same time, it kind of lets you inside the mind of these guys, kind of going, well, they're human like anybody else. You know, there's emotions in there, and I kind of, even if it's rock music, there's emotions in there. I like it. Anyway, I won't waste any more time on it.
No, I love the track. I absolutely love the track. Right, so we're on to track 8, On Through the Night, Rex.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of weird. I'm not really sure the history of this song, but like, you know, why wasn't that on the first album? Because that's what the first album is called. And to me, it sounds like it could have been on the first album. So I'm not sure about that. I kind of like the chorus more than the verses. So the verses are kind of a little to me, but there's a section of the song that begins at the 2-minute and 40 mark, 2-minute and 40-second mark. That is a really cool kind of another instrumental section in there. That is really good. Again, you know, you're talking about Steve and Pete playing, and you know, I don't think people realize how good of players those guys were together. And like you said, Darren, I'm not sure that Pete Willis really gets enough credit for the early days of those guys with Def Leppard. So, you know, it's a good, decent song, I feel, though, on the album.
Yeah, I've agreed. I'll kind of, at the risk of repeating myself, I'll suppose come on the back of that, what you're saying about Pete Willis. He doesn't get I feel as though, as I said, he's not erased from the narrative, but I still feel he doesn't get the recognition he probably deserves, because everyone loves Phil Collin. I love Phil Collin, you know, but I think just because a great guitarist like Phil Collin comes in, it should never be forgotten what Pete's contributions were to this band, including this song.
I think, it's sort of weird with Def Leppard. There's the sort of sites that I follow on social media. This album and the one before are like the favourites from a lot of Def Leppard fans. But these are sort of like, you know, sort of like, because they were totally different when I think on these first two albums, they were a lot heavier. They were more new wave of British heavy metal at that time. I don't know, both you guys know what new wave of British heavy metal. There's a lot of bands when they're back then. Iron Maiden were in that new wave of British heavy metal, Saxon, those sort of bands. And they were clubbed in with that. And they probably should have been, especially on the first album. But I think they were trying to lose that a little bit on this album, but they still had that where they were heavy. And then, of course, they went further and further away from it. But a lot of fans do actually cling on and say that Pete Willis is really missed, you know, and I think they say he's really missed more. They missed that sort of sound of Def Leppard as well, I think. You know, a lot of fans, you know, obviously they were so successful, but a lot of fans say they sold out because of the way they went, you know. I mean, I prefer, to tell you the truth, this is probably my favourite Def Leppard album out of all of them. You know, I've got this weird cat climbing on my back now, look. And what's going on here? I'll leave it out. But yeah, I mean, it is my favourite Def Leppard album. It really is. I mean, I loved Pyromania as well. But, you know, I think this was, I think they caught what they call lightning in a bottle on this album. I think it's got so much energy in it. Out of all the albums, it's got so much, you know, it really feels alive to me, this album. But Pete Willis, I think, you know, I think he is highly thought of. A bit like, but fans, don't they? They go for that obscurity. It's like Maiden fans talk about Paul Di'Anno. You know, leave it out. Bruce Dickinson's.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? People like to cling on to something that ain't there. That was there at the beginning, you know. But I love his guitar work on this. I think they're absolutely superb, both of them. I really do. Yeah. I actually, going to On Through the Night, though, On Through the Night, I love that galloping riff, you know, that goes through those verses. I think it's great. But to tell you the truth, for me, there's two tracks on here that I think are like the weaker tracks. And this is one of them for me. This is like, not totally filler, but not the best, you know, not up to standard of the rest of On Through the Night for me is one of those for some reason. I like it, but I've never got on with it like the rest of the album. Right.
In my opinion, there's no excuse for filler on a 10-song album.
Yeah.
Exactly, Darren. Yes.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's not filler, but it's not up to scratch for me for the rest of the album, you know. But there's always going to be something that's a little bit weaker than the rest, isn't there?
Agreed.
But yeah, you're totally right, though. You're totally right. A 10-track albums, that's how it used to be, wasn't it? I mean, now it's now there's too many sometimes. Now you get 15, 16 songs. It's a bit too many. But there you go. Right, the next track. Let's move on to the next one. He's my favourite on the album. He's actually my favourite track. Yeah, it is. I love Mirror Mirror, in brackets, look into my eyes. So opening riff, absolutely love it. It's a sort of, yet again, it's a very moody sort of song, brings a lot of atmosphere in this one. It's strolling off of that AC/DC type vibe that's on some of the album. And they're sort of I feel they're finding their way a bit on this one. I love the bass. There's like a thumping bass through the verses, which I think is great. With Joe Elliott's voice, he's excellent on this all the way through it. And yet again, I think Rex might have mentioned this earlier on. They're showing some really cool backing vocals on this. Obviously, they had great backing vocals yet to come, but they're starting to shine through on this. And that's where they're getting away from their new wave of British heavy metal type thing. You'd never heard any of those backing vocals on the first album, was there? There wasn't that harmonising, nothing like it was later on. But they're starting to show that in this. And I love the guitar solo in this, almost like a Middle Eastern sort of sound. Excellent guitar solo on this one. But Mirror Mirror always has been, since I was a little baby, since I got into Def Leppard, it's always been one of my favourite songs of theirs, and it's my favourite song on this album. So I'm glad I ended up with this, not on purpose, you know.
Well, you picked them, Lee. You picked
exactly.
the song, so.
Exactly.
I think you're absolutely right. And I you know what? I didn't, full disclosure, I've got one song to go, and not once in all of my notes did I call out Rick Savage at all. Rick's a great bass player, and it's kind of cool that you've mentioned him on that song, because you're right, the bass is great on that. I love Rick and and Rick, effectively, isn't it? Drummers
Yeah.
as well. Like I love their, the percussion and the bass and
Yeah.
stuff with Leppard, and they've been with them all along. But yeah, good shout calling out Rick Savage, because he's, he doesn't have a lot of writing credits, but man, he can play bass.
Oh, he's brilliant, yeah.
And really, yeah, there's not really much to add. It has that, Def Leppard sound to it, that we know, and yeah, it's definitely one of the stronger songs on the album too, I feel.
Oh, good. We all agree.
There you go.
No, that's great.
Yeah,
no. Listen, that's the cool thing, isn't it, about music? You know what I mean? Everyone's got their own interpretation of each song. I think it's great. It makes it exciting. It really does. It's brilliant. So closing the album off, remember they actually I think they bought this album out later on, and they had another couple of tracks on it. Me and My Wine was one of them, but we're not going to include that because we're doing the original album. So it closes off with No, No, No. And we're going to close off with Darren's going to talk about this one.
Yeah, close off with No, 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 and you've got exclusively Pete Willis on lead guitar here, and it's fast and it's frenetic, and it's kind of just it's Leppard closing the album pretty much as they started it. It delivers on the promise from the first song. Do I overly like the song? Well, no. I don't. It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite on the LP. But I think it's still delivering on the promise they made at the start. It's hard rock. They're going for it. As I said, fast and frenetic. It's punching you in the face, and it's a good song to close out the album. But it's not my favorite.
Yeah, Darren, I would say probably this is probably my least favorite song on the album, and it might be because it's so frenetic and fast, and I'm thinking Def Leppard, not quite going that way. So it just does not really do much at all for me. And the end is like that repetitive no is, I think it's like 46 times it's on there at the end. That's just overkill for me.
Well, on that point, Rex, I mean, I done a video on Hall & Oates where I was kind of going, my favorite song was Did It in a Minute. And it was my favorite song because they kept repeating the chorus over and over and over. And no matter how many times I heard it for Did It in a Minute, I could have listened to it again and again and again. So I don't generally have a problem with a chorus being repeated if I'm enjoying it right to the end. If I just want to keep hearing it. But I'm with you on this. It's overkill.
It just sounds echoey, like, Did It in a Minute. There's several words there, but this is like this one word, just boom, boom, boom. And yeah, it's very jarring to me, I guess, or something.
Yeah.
Agreed. Again.
I'm totally with you on this, guys. This is the weakest track on the album, as far as I'm concerned. I said there was two that On Through the Night is a good track, but, I think it's one of the weaker ones. And No is definitely the weakest track on the album. Could have easily been on the debut album, which I'm not a great fan of, the debut album. I mean, I thought it was all right. But I think No is probably the only track on this album that could have been on that album as well. It's strange, isn't it? Because with last tracks, some bands really go for it and they put something a bit epic at the end, something, to really close it off. And some bands sort of put something like No at the end that, it just doesn't compare to the rest of the album. I'm not saying
you're right.
I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's not great either. It's not great either, really. But there you go.
No, you're right. Just to cap off that point, Lee, we spoke before when we did our Journey top 10 on your channel, and we spoke about one of my favorites in my top 10 was Rubicon, and Rubicon was the last song on Frontiers, and it wasn't filler. It wasn't, it didn't bore me. It wasn't. They just tacked it on at the end. Rubicon was a great song, but so it can be done. It has been done on plenty of albums, but this ain't it.
I don't know about you, but if I was, I know, look, Def Leppard, they've made it. They're millionaires, aren't they? But if I was in a band, I would want to put something to really go out on that was a bit special. Something a bit more, I probably would have done something like, I don't know, perhaps Mirror Mirror or something like that would have suited, something like that, a bit more epic, but, they obviously made the right choices, didn't they?
I think they did think this song was that though, Lee. I think in their heads when they were doing their track listing, they probably thought this was the right song to go out. As I said, and Rex said as well, it's fast and it's frenetic, and it's kind of, you'll remember us when you turn this off, but it missed the mark.
And yeah, again, it's something that the British public would probably want, something a bit heavy at the end of the album, but it could just be us, but we all three of us agree. I think it's probably the weakest track on the album as far as we're all concerned.
Let's see what the comments say.
Yeah, definitely. So we've done the album. Well, thanks guys. That was I really enjoyed it. It was really good fun. It's lovely to hear the different opinions on the songs. I mean, it's it's great. So it makes it exciting for me as well. So
I got a question, guys, because from America, I would have been 13 years old when this album came out. I didn't really know about this album until after Pyromania came out. Then when Pyromania came out, then I was like, okay, they have other albums out. Were you guys fans and followers right from the get-go? Or was this your first introduction to Def Leppard? I'm kind of curious, with you guys being over there in England and Ireland, how that was for you guys.
Well, from my point of view, as I said, I was born after this album was released. I was born in December. Right. So I started getting into, rock and stuff, when I was, 10, 12 years old. I mean, I was the kind of guy in school when people were getting Oasis CDs, I was getting Genesis and Visible Touch, So for me, I kind of discovered Leppard, really started to kind of go back and look at them when, 94, when Love and Hate Collide kind of came out, and then I started going and getting their LPs and stuff. So I'm a little bit later on in terms of how I discovered Leppard.
With me, I heard Leppard from the beginning. So my brother was a metal fan, a biker, and he bought a On Through the Night album. I remember him having it because I remember seeing the picture on the front. Didn't like the album. I just didn't like On Through the Night. I still ain't that keen on it now. I liked Wasted. That was the only track I liked, but I was only 10, 9 or 10. But I remember hearing Bringing On the Heartbreak and loving it. Absolutely loved it off this album. And I loved the High and Dry albums when it came out. But I was into AC/DC by then and everything like that. Highway to Hell was constantly on my turntable, so I was heavily into heavy rock when I was 10. That's pretty good, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do remember Bringing On the Heartbreak, but I think after Pyromania came out, I think then really people were like, okay, let's check out the album before too. And I don't know if I was like everyone in America, but that kind of seemed to be a little bit of how things went for kids over here in America with Def Leppard. That Pyromania album really broke open the doors.
Yeah, and I was reading something about that because it re-entered the charts again, apparently. So it did quite well, apparently, High and Dry. But then when Pyromania hit massive, this High and Dry re-entered the charts. I don't know where it came, but it sold a lot of albums. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yeah. They're probably a good job because they saw the potential there because, I mean, it's a great album. I mean, I sort of fight myself a little bit with Pyromania. I used to fight myself with Pyromania and this and High and Dry. What was my favourite album? I think I just veer towards High and Dry a little bit more. It's a bit more raw.
Well, I don't think for me it's any, this is a High and Dry video, so I won't go into it too much, but I've got Def Leppard and the Women of Doom, and behind me I've got... So that'll give you an indication of my favourite.
Another bad album cover.
I like it.
No, listen, guys, that's great. We've got to end there. Really happy to have you on. Obviously, we're going to be doing loads more of these. And hope to catch up with you soon. Any last words from you guys, Darren?
No, cheers, Lee. Thanks for having me on again. Enjoyed the Journey one before and on for the second video now. So it's fun and hopefully we'll do it again soon. Thanks.
Cool. Rex?
Yes, Lee, thanks for having me on. I'll try to do as many of these as I can. And this has been a blast. It's always fun talking about classic music, and especially when that's when you were growing up. And it just brings back so many good memories for me.
Yeah. Listen, guys, thanks for coming on. And if you guys looking at this video, let us know what you think of High and Dry. Do you think it's their best album? Where do you rate it in the catalogue of Def Leppard? Do you agree with what we said about some of the tracks? Let us know. Be kind, please. And if you want to subscribe, please press the red button, bottom right-hand corner.